Welcome back to Baking in Our Christmas Jammies. I'm so excited to get started. Our first recipe is Grinch cookies. So what makes a Grinch cookie? Basically, it's any cookie that's green and it has a heart on it. That is a Grinch cookie. The ones we're going to be making today are so delicious. They're vanilla crinkle cookies. They kind of melt in your mouth. They're that good. So let's get started. So what do we need for this recipe? We need salted butter, 1 egg, baking soda, vanilla extract, powdered sugar, and granulated sugar, so both kinds. Flour. If you're gluten-free, you can use gluten-free flour. That will also work in this recipe. Because we're making Grinch cookies, we will need food coloring, so like a green food coloring. You can use any shade that you wish. You can have that really ugly green Grinch color, or you can have a deeper Grinch color. It is up to you. We're also going to need something for the hearts. So I have different kinds. You can find different things in like a Michael's store or Target, Amazon. So they can be different sizes. Whatever you find works great. We are also going to need measuring cups and measuring spoons, a spatula, 2 bowls. I like to do my dry ingredients in one bowl and my wet ingredients in another and then combine them. A cookie sheet, and I like to use either a silicone mat or parchment paper. For easy cleanup, also keeps the cookies browning evenly. It's just much easier to use those. If you don't have one, you can put them directly on the pan. That will work as well. And we're also going to need a quart-sized plastic bag or plastic wrap, because at one point we're going to want to harden up the dough a little bit. You're also welcome to use a mixer for this recipe, or you can use a spatula. It is up to you. When I do this recipe with kids, usually I do it just with the spatula. Get their hands right in the dough, and it's a lot of fun and not as intimidating as using a mixer. But again, up to you. So let's get started making the recipe. So the first thing you always want to do is, of course, wash your hands. I know I have a lot of younger viewers, so I always like to have that little reminder. The next thing you want to do is preheat your oven. You always want to do it at the start of a recipe. That way it's all nicely heated and ready to go. So preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 177 degrees Celsius. So I'm going to do mine. Then I'm going to take my first bowl, my smaller bowl, and I'm going to mix together my dry ingredients. And this recipe is really easy. We only have 2 dry ingredients. We have our flour and our baking soda. So the first thing I'm going to do is add 1.5 cups of all-purpose white flour. So I'm going to grab my flour. And remember, when we measure flour, we don't want to pack it down. So we're going to spoon this into our measuring cup instead of scooping it, because you'll end up with more flour than you want, which results in a denser, heavier baked good. So you don't want to do that. So we're going to do 1 cup plus 1/2 cup. If you're looking for the amount of grams, if you're measuring this instead on a scale, that is in the recipe sheet that you can print out. That's in the description. So I'm going to add that right to my bowl. So 1.5 cups. So that's my 1 cup, and I'm going to do my 1/2 cup. And then again, the only other ingredient we're adding for our dry ingredients is our baking soda. So I have mine right here. It may look like this. And we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. So 1/4 in your measuring spoon. Add that right to the bowl. And then I usually just mix that up a little bit. That way every cookie gets a little of the baking soda. And then I'm just going to set that aside, and we're going to do our wet ingredients. So I'm going to take my larger bowl for that. If both your bowls are the same size, just take your second bowl, and that's what we'll use. And what we're going to add to this is our butter. So you want your butter softened. So if you just took it out of the refrigerator, you will want to put it in the microwave for about 10 to 12 seconds, depending how cold your butter is, and that should soften it up. So you want your butter a little squishy. So I've already softened mine, so I'm going to add it right to my bowl. In the future, for softened butter, you can also just leave it on the counter for an hour or 2, and that will soften it up, depending on the temperature of the kitchen, of course. So 1/2 cup or 1 stick of butter, and then we're going to add our white granulated sugar, so our regular sugar. And we need 3/4 cup of granulated sugar. So 3/4 on your measuring cup. And you can either scoop that into the measuring cup or scoop it out with the measuring cup. It does not matter for sugar. It will not get packed down like flour. So I'm going to add my 3/4 cup, and then level it off and add that right to my bowl. You could use just a spatula. You could work that all with the spatula if your butter is soft enough. Do it that way, or you can use a mixer. So I'm just going to start on low and then work my way up, get it mixed up nicely. And you want it kind of creamy, fluffy. So just keep mixing until it's all combined. I like to stop it for a minute and just kind of push it all down, get it all mixed together. If you're doing this with just a spatula, just keep mixing it. It will come together. And again, there's a point where you use your hands to mix it further, and the heat of your hands will melt the butter a little more if it's not soft enough when you do this step. If you have a little flying different places, you can throw it right back in the bowl as long as your counter is clean. Mine is. Okay, that looks pretty good. It's not completely mixed up, but we're going to be adding some liquid, which will help mix it further. So what we're going to do next is add our egg. And what I like to do when I do an egg, I like to crack it into something other than the bowl. That way, if you get any eggshell in there, you can easily fish it out with your finger or a spoon, and you don't have to dig through everything to find it. So I'm going to just take my 1 cup measuring cup. We don't need that anymore. So I'm just going to crack my egg into there. So tap, tap, tap on the counter, and then pull it apart with your thumbs. And if you get any eggshell in there, that is fine. Just fish it out with your finger or a spoon, and everybody's done it, so don't worry about it. And then we're going to add our egg right to our mixture. So that's 1 egg. And then we're going to add our vanilla extract. So your bottle may be a little smaller than this. I use a lot of vanilla. So what we're going to do is 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. So measure a spoon like that. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And just pour that right in there. And if you get a little more, if it overflows a little bit, that is okay. I've never had a problem with adding too much vanilla to something. You don't want to do that with salt, but vanilla is never a problem. So we have our egg and our vanilla in there. I'm just going to use my spatula to kind of break that up, start mixing it a little before I get my mixer going. And then I'm going to use my mixer to completely mix it. So right now it looks a little chunky there, that's fine. I'm just going to use my spatula because you don't want to really over mix it with an egg in there. So I'm just going to scoop it together like this, push it down a little bit, just get that mixed up a little more. And then we're going to add our food coloring. So we need green food coloring. So I recommend for the food coloring just start with 1 to 2 drops, see if it's the color you want. If you wanted a deeper color, then you can add more later, but you can never take away once you've added it. So start with 2 drops. So I'm starting with 2, and if I want more, I can always add that. So I'm going to go back to my mixer for this to get that all mixed in there. There. And then what we're going to do is add our dry ingredients to our wet ingredients. So my rule of thumb is you always add to the bigger bowl. So if your bowls are the same size, you can go either way. But since in this case my bigger bowl is my wet ingredients, I'm going to add my dry to my wet. And then mix that all up. And I'm going to go back to my mixer. Again, if you're doing this by hand, you can use your spatula. Start out slow so it doesn't go flying everywhere. See that green peeking through. And it will start to come together. Hope you're having fun too. What all these recipes are about. It's about having fun, learning new recipes in our Christmas jammies, in this case. it'll start to come together. If you're using the mixer, it will start to come together. If you're doing it with a spatula, we're going to do a little with our hands to make that butter really come together. Either way, we're going to use our hands a little for this. So I'll show you. So that's what mine's looking like right now. So either way, if you were using a spatula or if you were using the mixer, you're going to want to get your hands in there now. So if you haven't watched them, now's a great time. And then what you're going to do is start to put your hands in there. Because what that's going to do is soften that butter a little more, get it all completely mixed up. And if you're using the mixer, it should be pretty well mixed. If you're not, then I'll show you some tricks if your butter is still a little hard and not going together. All depends on the temperature in your kitchen and the temperature of the butter when you started. But what you can do is you can go like this, kind of fold it over, and that was going to get everything all mixed together so everything's a uniform green. And so this is the point. If you don't like the color that's going on here, you could add a drop or two more. Kind of like this color, so I'm going to stick with it. If you want to add some more, you can add it now. You can then turn the mixer back on and get it all in there. Or you can make a hole in the center and just add a couple drops and then do the fold over, and that will get it all mixed up. And this might be, if your butter is melting like mine is, it might get a little sticky. You might start to look like the Grinch. But that's part of the fun. If you have an aversion to getting your hands all sticky, some people don't like that feeling, you can also do this with like plastic bags on your hands and get it all mixed through that way. So mine's looking pretty good. So at this point, take either plastic wrap or your quart-sized plastic bag like I have right here. And you're going to put your dough inside the bag. And either will work, plastic wrap, or you could also put plastic wrap on top of your bowl. That would also work. I'll seal up my bag. And then I'm going to put it in the freezer for 5 minutes. So I'm going to put that in the freezer, and I'll be back. So I just took my dough out of the freezer. So all that did again was just harden it up a little bit so our cookies don't spread as much. And so that was the purpose of that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1/4 of a cup of powdered sugar, so the confectionery sugar, the powdery kind, and we're going to add it to one of the bowls that we used previously. So I'm going to add it to my dry ingredient bowl, or dirty another bowl. And so again, I need 1/4 of a cup, 1/4 on my measuring cup. I'm going to add that right to that bowl. And what we're going to use this for is to roll our cookies in. What that does is it helps with the crinkle of our cookies. So it makes a nice crinkle cookie. So I'm going to take a little bit of my dough, and you can use a scooper or you can use just your hands and pull off a little bit of dough. We need about 2 tablespoons of dough. You can just break it off. I'm just going to eyeball it for this. I'll take my dough, break off a little piece. It's about this size. That's about 2 tablespoons. And you're going to just roll it between your hands into a ball. And then what you're going to do is roll that in your powdered sugar. It doesn't have to be like thickly coated or anything. Just roll it in. Whatever goes on it is fine. And then you're going to put that on your cookie sheet. And then what you're going to do is you're going to add a heart. So again, I had all these different kinds of hearts here. This is the one I like the best. This is Wilton Sprinkles, and I'm going to do the red hearts. I'm going to take one of the red hearts, and I'm just going to put it on the center of my cookie. I'll show you what that looks like. Keep doing this until you have used all of your dough. And then what we're going to do is we're going to place these in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 177 degrees Celsius, and we're going to bake them for 9 to 11 minutes. Mine usually take 11 minutes, but your oven may be different. So start out at 9 minutes, then check them. As long as they are golden brown around the edges, they are done. I'm going to put mine in and set my timer, and I will be back when those are done. So mine just came out of the oven, and this is what they look like. So what you'll see is there'll be some crinkles on top. If yours don't have any, don't worry, they will as they settle, the crinkles will form. So right now they might look really, really full, but they settle down as they sit on the cookie sheet. What you'll want to do is leave these on the cookie sheet to cool for a little bit, about 10 minutes. They'll continue to cook a little, so you definitely want to do that. And then you can put them on a cooling rack or just leave them on the cookie sheet to cool completely. Up to you. If you are going to reuse this pan for the remaining dough balls, you can do that. You just want to make sure it's cooled down to room temperature. So I hope you enjoy your Grinch cookies.